All right, let's talk third party here for a few minutes, shall we? Not encouraging it or prognosticating that it will happen, but it could happen. There's some interesting numbers here. Well, maybe we're encouraging it. If it means that Republicans going to win, that's great. Depends on which third party we're talking about, or who the candidate is and how that plays out. Let's just put out some interesting. Clay's got some polling on this right now, and let's just look back at the last month or so of some of the narratives that are out there and who might go third party. There's a whole range. And this is why I meant, who are we talking about? A lot of you are, I think RFK Jr. for a lot of people right now is whom they are thinking of with a possible third party, because this came out recently. RFK Jr. has not committed to backing Joe Biden if he loses in the primary, which I like this. Right? Rush would talk about Operation Chaos. This is a form of chaos. You could have the Democrat side. It's also why I think they won't go with an actual primary because of all of the wrangling and everything. But, we'll see. But RFK Jr. doesn't say he'll back him. He could go third party. That would be, based on the numbers right now, an issue. Clay, some of the other third party possibilities that are being talked about. I'm just saying the ones that are being talked about. People are going to be like, how dare you bring up Liz Cheney, Joe Manchin, Bernie Sanders. I don't think Bernie will do it. I don't buy that for a second. I think Bernie's a Democrat who likes to pretend he's not a Democrat because he gets more attention, but he's not going to run third party. But Liz Cheney might and get a whopping 0.0001% of the vote. Joe Manchin, I don't think so, but who knows? RFK Jr., certainly a real possibility if he doesn't win the Democrat primary outright. We know he may win New Hampshire, right? Because Biden's team is basically writing off as of right now New Hampshire. They're just they're going right to, I shouldn't say writing it off, Iowa and New Hampshire saying, hey, you guys don't get to just change the game in the Democrat primary to suit Biden's agenda. And so they may hold primaries, and there may be the possibility that Biden loses those, right? I shouldn't say caucus and then a primary. Covering a lot of ground here. Cornell West, a former Princeton, he might still be a Princeton professor, but a professor, academic, seen him on the Bill Maher show, stuff like that. He's a far left guy. He may run. Clay, what do the numbers tell us about how serious this is and what, for example, an RFK Jr. third-party run would mean?
So no labels is the most prominent third-party candidacy idea. And No Labels has tens of millions of dollars. They have already obtained access to many different ballots, which is actually very difficult. No Labels has said if Trump and Biden are the nominees, in other words, if we get a rematch, they will run. And there was polling released today. This is swing state survey data. I think that the Democrats are feeling a lot of pressure over this. So I think they are trying to pressure No Labels. According to this data coming out, Trump would win the election if No Labels runs a candidate. And they polled Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, North Carolina, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And they have No Labels getting between 19 and 28% of the vote. And Trump wins all of those states if No Labels puts forward someone like Joe Manchin. And they would probably have a split ticket, to be honest. And there's been talk Larry Hogan, the Republican governor formerly of Maryland, might run on a ticket with him. So they probably would have a Republican and a Democrat on that ticket. Manchin most prominently discussed as the third-party candidate. But according to this polling, Trump wins every swing state, and Trump would win a landslide. Now, Buck, you remember probably, and I know a lot of our listeners do, I remember this very well, Ross Perot memorably ran as a third-party candidate, and I believe Buck got 19% of the vote in 1992.
Right. Ross Perot is why Bill Clinton became president.
Correct.
Yep.
So there is a strong argument that this could be the reverse of that now if the Democrats were to have a third-party candidate, because those of you who remember 1992, Bill Clinton very much encouraged Ross Perot's candidacy. I believe, and again, I'm just doing it off the top of my head, I think Clinton won in 92, Buck, with 43% of the overall vote.
That sounds
a lot of
right.
people don't talk about it.
It was substantially less than half. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was 43% of the overall vote.
And
Ross Perot at some point actually led if you remember. I remember my grandparents voted for Ross Perot back in 1992 in that election.
You know what's amazing for me is, when I think about Ross Perot, the thing that comes to mind is Dana Carvey doing Ross Perot on SNL. Can it finish? Yeah. Can it finish? Remember? He did such a, some of those, this is back when SNL actually tried to be funny. Some of the political send-ups that they did really embedded themselves deeply in the minds of different people. But the poll that I saw from this is from last month. It's a News Nation DDHQ poll. 49% of, and this was a poll I believe of registered voters. 49% of voters would at least consider a third party option in a Trump Biden rematch. Now, consider is not vote for, obviously, but it does show that there is that middle third of the country, let's be honest, that there's a middle third of the country that maybe a little more Republican leaning, maybe a little more Democrat leaning, and all the way down into independents. I think independents in general right now, and it'd be great to actually see some data on this. So I'm just extrapolating. I think independents are feeling like they don't have an option that's particularly appealing to them at this moment. That could change in a year. We'll see what Trump says. We'll see what the other Republicans. Hey, look, we got Vivek on later today. We got everybody comes on this show on the right. But right now, there's a little bit of a, are we really going to do this all over again mentality for independents? And I think that's why you're seeing such an open lane for the third party. It could shut down. It could close. But right now, the numbers suggest otherwise.
Frankly, I think there's a lot of people who are not enamored of a rematch who are Republicans and Democrats, too, right? I think, and I think a large part of it is age. I think I would bet 70% of Americans right now think that both Trump and Biden are too old. Now, I think 30% are like, I'm all in on Trump. I think there's almost nobody who is all in on Biden. We've talked about this before. Biden does not have anyone who actually likes him. And he won as the anti-Trump, right? But just put it this way. Do you ever see a Biden sign? Do you ever see somebody walking around in a Biden T-shirt? He has 0% of people who actually like him.
I wouldn't even say necessarily he's the anti-Trump. He's the not Trump, which it's similar but slightly different, as in he's just a not Trump candidate, right? Like he wasn't particularly effective in attacking Trump. He just was the Democrat that they picked. And if you remember, I mean, we keep this in mind too, at this phase of the game. This early on, you don't know, what are we, 6-7 months out from, when the real votes start coming in, 7 months out, right? You don't know very much about where this is all heading. Joe Biden was kind of a joke candidate, it seemed. He was in 2008 initially. Everyone forget. He was like a 3% guy, 4% guy. He was not high when Obama actually ended up winning in 2008. And if you look at how it started in the Democrat primary, he was I think early on, if memory serves, I'm just trying to think of how it was. There were a lot of Democrat candidates. He was like a middle tier guy by the polls. And then it all turned around. It really looked for a moment like it was going to be Bernie. You remember that? And I actually think that would have been great for the country to see Trump against Bernie, because Bernie says the things that Democrats really believe on a whole range of issues. Joe Biden is the slimy salesman who pretends to be something he's not, right? At least with Bernie, you get the authentic, full-blown communism.
Not only that, Buck, there was actually a lot of discussion about Bloomberg or Biden. And I think if James Clyburn had come out and said, Bloomberg is my guy, I think Bloomberg would have been the nominee. But and you know this, Bloomberg's brain actually works. I mean, he would have been 1 billion times better, I think, as president than Joe Biden has been, because Bloomberg used to be a Republican. I mean, I think he's somewhat rational in many thought processes that he has. But yeah, they looked at it and they said this was pre-COVID. Remember, they put the fix in before COVID happened. Everybody forgets Biden got smoked in Iowa. He got smoked. I think he came in 6th in New Hampshire and 5th in Iowa, something like that. Not even in the top 5,
he was like
basically.
Middle of the big Democrat pack early on.
And he left and came to South Carolina, and James Clyburn said, "You're my pick," and then it was over. And I think Clyburn looked at the available candidates. He said Bernie would lose to, I'm talking as if I was Clyburn. He said Bernie would lose to Trump because he's too far left wing. And but remember, black people also don't like Bernie. He never had any appeal in the minority community. He said, and again, I'm talking as Clyburn, no black people are voting for Mayor Pete. He's gay. Let's be honest. That was the calculus. And that's still the calculus. Why I think Mayor Pete is, nobody will even talk about this. Mayor Pete is never going to be president because black guys are not voting for a gay white guy to be president of the United States. They're just not going to do it. Nobody will talk about it because you're not supposed to be homophobic. Black dudes aren't voting for a gay white guy to be president of the United States as a group. And then so you run through. Elizabeth Warren is a joke, too far left wing. And I really think Clyburn came down to Bloomberg or Biden, and he took Biden, and Biden's the president because of James Clyburn.
Let's take some calls on all this, folks. The third party situation. I'm curious, would any of you consider, I mean, we got Republicans almost, I don't know, we got some Democrats and independents listening to the show. I always love, I get an email. Don't you think it's funny when you get the email from a Democrat listener who's like, hey, I'm a Democrat, but I like the way you guys are, you know what I mean? I'm like, you don't have to apologize. We love that you listen. Listen, we want, everybody, because we feel like we're doing an educational service here for anybody.
I'm always trying to persuade, Buck. I think every single day when I wake up, I mean, this is my whole book that's coming out next month. How do we get back to normalcy in the country? How do we get back to sanity? You have to persuade the persuadable.